Hello and welcome to my channel. This morning we're going to be taking a quick look at some mixed media techniques. I have this little book and I quite enjoy in a morning just having a bit of a play with the various media and different ideas and perhaps trying things together that I haven't tried before. And I was quite pleased this morning with how I got some texture using this technique. It could be nice for a background or just for doing a simple little abstract. So what I've used was gesso, wax pastels and the Derwent inktense blocks. You could perhaps use watercolour instead of the inktense if you've not got any of the inktense blocks. And I quite liked, I'm not sure how much the camera's picking up, I hope it will focus on that, but I quite like the colours in this one that I thought would be quite nice for a landscape. But you can see how with both of them we've got plenty of line and texture in them, so I thought I would give it a go on a larger scale and perhaps a little less abstract and a bit more structure to it. So I'm going to get this book that I've used before. I'll just pop that one out of the way. So this was the Faber-Castell mixed media pad that we did. You might recall we did the cow, and what else did we do? Oh, last week we did an elephant, and so we'll use that nice mixed media paper. I'll just check that that's in line. Yep. Okay, so to begin with, all I did was put a layer of the gesso on. So this is an acrylic gesso primer, and this particular one's from Jackson's, and it's a white one. And I just scooped some out with a cheap plastic spatula and spread it on the paper. I won't go right to the edges, I'll leave a bit of a margin. So you don't need too much. And then, obviously this is quite abstract and impressionistic, so don't worry about that being completely flat. It's nice to have a bit of texture in it, that's the whole idea. And then these brushes that I've got this nice shaped end to them that you can use for moving your paint around and shaping. Or you could use your spatula or a stick or the end of a pencil or anything really for this. And I was just going to make some random lines, but the last one that I did in my little book I used completely abstract lines. But this one I'm just going to make it look maybe as if it's a bit of a landscape, so maybe some hills. But quite free. I'm going to leave the top bit without much line because that could be sky up here. And then all we need to do then is leave that to completely dry. Just make sure you wash your brush off before that dries on. Now that's completely dry, we need to apply the wax pastels. So I've got all sorts of colours in here, but I wanted to stick to some sort of earthy colours, make it a bit more natural. So let's have a look. This one says burnt ochre, so that'd be quite nice for a ground colour in the foreground. So you can either use them by adding lines. Again, I'm not overthinking this, I'm just going to do it quite abstractly, impressionist. Or you could shade and go over the whole thing, and you see as you go over where these lines are that you've made in the gesso, it's just making some variety of texture and line. Maybe go heavier in places to build up a bit more tone, and just vary it a lot. Okay, and then we'll put a little bit of a brighter colour in that might be perhaps some sunlight. So what's that one? Pale orange it says, but it doesn't look very orangey, does it? Let's have a look. And I'm going to put that sort of in an area where maybe the sun could be peeping up over those hills. Just sort of think about a bit of form. And then we need some greens perhaps. And what have we got? Leaf green. Okay, maybe go a bit heavier near the base, near the foreground, and lighter further back. Mix it in with the other colours as well. Maybe we should have some blues or purpley colours further back. Let's have a look what we've got. It's quite a nice blue. Well, that's the ultramarine. Perhaps a bit too dark, but we'll see. Maybe some brighter yellow in the foreground. What's this one say? Chrome yellow. So give that one a go, and maybe put a little bit of that where we thought we had the sun coming up, and have the sun coming all the way through the picture down to the bottom. And then we'll look at a colour for the sky. Actually, I don't think I'll put any wax in the sky. Maybe we'll just put a very pale blue in the sky, and we'll do the sky mostly with the paint. So I'll just pop a bit of that in, but not the whole thing. Whoops, can you see there the gesso's not quite dry where it's piled up. Okay, so that's probably enough wax. So I'll actually haven't put this gesso away, I'll just put the lid on that, and then it's not drying up. And we'll get the inktense. So I've got the set of, how many is there in there? 24. So we've got a nice enough selection in there. You can get a bigger set, but it's quite a nice selection of colours, especially for landscapes in this set. So I'll start off at the top of the painting and start with some blue, and I'm going to use them quite strong straight from the block. If you wanted to, you could water them down and use them from your palette. If it's too thick, you could always mix it on the paper, add some water to the paper. So just with some water on your brush, some clean water, just mix it in and thin it out a bit. And come down to where that, do you remember we put that bit of sunshine there, so we'll go over the top of that, because it's not, when it dries it won't stick to that. Okay, for the distant hills, perhaps a little bit of a purpley colour or a pinky colour. I think we need to be a bit stronger actually. Get some brightness in. And we'll come over with some yellow where we want that light coming down. And some green now as well. This is just an old brush it's not going to matter if it gets spoilt on all this texture of the gesso. I'll just pick out a bit of a shape of that hill. I know we've got it there with the gesso, but it just makes a bit more definition, just using the brush on its side. And allow the colours to mix on the paper. So leave some areas thicker paint and some thinner paint again, that builds up the tones, makes it a bit more interesting. A little bit more of that purple up here I think. And then plenty of the green in the foreground, but I think I'll put some lighter green in the foreground as well. The thing about these inktenses, we've got some nice greens. These two here are very natural looking. This one perhaps not so, but these two are really nice and natural looking. At this stage you can just have a play around with your brush, just keep looking back and thinking where you might want to go a bit darker or a bit lighter. In fact, I think it'd be quite nice to bring some of the blue and the mauve into the foreground just to balance the picture a bit. Which blue was it we used? It's quite a cobalty blue, isn't it? You could have, maybe that's some water in the foreground. A bit of a mess there. Now the good thing about Inktense, using it on top of gesso, is it's easier to lift. So as you know, you can't really lift Inktense from your watercolour paper in the same way that you would lift your watercolours, but you can lift it if it's still a little bit damp. You can lift it better off the gesso. So if you wanted to lift some clouds out, maybe, I mean that's starting to dry, but you can see what I mean. You could lift some shapes out and again get a bit more texture back. You might want to lift out a little bit of light, or again just use it for texture. And this picture will alter as it dries and it all settles into these grooves that you've made in the gesso. And once it's dried, you can always come back and add extra layers on top of it. And that's the good thing about the Inktense, is once that's dried, those Inktense layers there are permanent, and then you can layer on top of them. If you wanted the colours to move into each other a little bit more, you could always get your spray bottle and just lightly give it a mist. And that's going to alter things again and make a, you know, a different feeling to your painting. So, and then you might want to just tidy up some of the sky and add colour, take colour away with your tissue. Just have a real good play at building it up and building it up. And if I'm looking now, I think it perhaps wants a bit more tone, a bit more variety between the darks and the lights. So just add some extra pigment in, especially into the foreground. But again, it will change as the picture dries. Just keep coming back to it and having a look, seeing where things need adding. But of course you don't have to do a landscape, you could do something completely abstract and use it maybe as a background or all sorts of things to stencil on top of, anything like that. Okay, so thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you've got some gesso, it's a good way to have a bit of fun with it. And don't worry if you haven't got the wax pastels. You could just use some ordinary wax crayons. If you've got any children's wax crayons, anything like that. And if you haven't got those, a candle makes a nice wax resist as well. So it wouldn't be coloured, but you'd still get that resist and the texture. Okay, so thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back with you again soon. Bye for now.